Okay, 5.2, polynomials and zeros. Okay, so we're going to work with factoring polynomials and finding the zero multiplicities. That means how many zeros there are, and we're not going to necessarily worry about writing them coming with the zeros. So here's the cool part about this. In order to graph this, we must know what the end behavior is. Okay, and we must be able to factor. That's what this is, and we need to know how many times that shows up. Now, the cool part about this particular thing is if you know, which you guys do know, if we know how many zeros do we have, and if we know what it looks like. So I know that if it is a positive even, the graph's going to start up here on the left and end here on the right. We know that if it's a negative even exponent, it's going to be down here and here. We also know if it's an odd positive, it goes something like this. An odd negative, it goes something like this. So we're going to take this fact, we're going to use some other things to go along with this. Our goal, actually the next 2 or 3 assignments are basically the same thing. We're going to really practice this and make sure that we're good with this. So finding zeros, we have to make sure that we factor the polynomials. So when I factor this particular problem, we're going to go through and do the whole thing with this. So first thing I do is I look to see, okay, it's odd because the degree is 3. The leading coefficient is 1, so it's positive. So I go to my graph, I'm going to put a little X down here because I know it starts to the bottom left and it ends in the bottom right, in the top right. So that's where those are the 2 targets I have. Now I start to factor this. When I look at this, I see x to the third. I really don't like x to the third. I'd much rather have x squared. But I also notice there's an x in here, and an x in here. So let's take that out. Now, when I divide by x, what that does is it just knocks these off. This goes down by 1 because I knocked this off. This goes down by 1 because I knocked that off. So I have x squared minus x minus 12 equals 0. Now, this is how I like to factor these problems, and all the problems that you guys have to do today are pretty similar to this. So what I'm looking at is it's x squared. All right, so that tells me I only have 2 sets of parentheses. I know that I'm looking at, I multiply this number times this number, so it multiplies to make negative 12 and adds to make negative 1. So I start thinking about my combinations. Well, to get a negative number, one's positive, one negative. To make it negative, the bigger number has to be negative. I know negative 12 times 1, negative 6 times 2, and negative 4 times 3. One of those happens to be it. Happens to be this one. So this x stays right there, goes out in front. 2 sets of parentheses. X times x is x squared, so that's where I get that. I will need to use the numbers negative 4 and 3. Now once I get this, I set all these equal to 0. X, because it has a variable, it gets set equal to 0. X minus 4 equals 0, and x plus 3 equals 0. Now I solve for x. Well, this one obviously doesn't change, but this one does. I add 4 to both sides. This one I subtract 3 to both sides. So there are my 3 answers for this. Now we'll go to my graph. I have a target right here at 0. I have a target right here at negative 3. I have a target right here at 4. So what I'm trying to do now is I got to draw a line that starts here, hits each one of these, and ends up in this direction. It can't touch this x-axis any place else. It has to hit just these. So it's going to start down here, go up. It's got to come back down and through. It's got to go back up. So there's my graph of this. All right, now what's new for us today, we already know where it starts and stops. We already know how to factor. So the new part is, where do I put that line? And once I start, I cannot Like, I can't come up with a new line. And it has to hit those targets. Let's do this next one here. Okay, x to the third, positive. So it's odd, positive. So again, my graph is going to go here and up here. Now look at these three. I can factor out an x. When I do that, I'm dividing everything by x. All the variables go down by 1. So it's x squared plus 2x minus 15 equals 0. What multiplies to make negative 15 adds up to make 0? Well, 5 and negative 3. Set each factor equal to 0 and solve. We'll subtract 5 from both sides, add 3 to both sides. So those are my three answers. At negative 5, I got 0, I got 3. Notice none of these answers repeat, so they all have a multiplicity of 1. The multiplicity is how many times the answers repeat. Now I draw my line. Well, to tell you the truth, it's the same graph as what I did. There it is. Same graph as the last one. Let's keep going, see if we can make this a little bit more challenging. Okay, so here's this. By the way, I think this is challenging enough. Here's my degree. Here's my leading coefficient. Even positive. Starts up here, ends up here. Looking at these numbers, what can I factor out? Well, all of them can be divided by 2. So I'm going to divide each one of these by 2. But look, there's an x squared, x to the third. So I can take out an x squared out of each thing. That goes away. There's 2 to take away from here, so there's 2 left. That goes away. There's 2 to take away from here, so there's only 1 left. Those 2 all go away, and this makes negative 12. All right, well, I factored this already. So here's what I'm going to do. This one gets written down. Oh, I better factor this, sorry. Minus 4 plus 3. X minus 4 equals 0. X plus 3 equals 0. X equals negative 3. X equals 4. Divide both sides by 2. And then take the square root of both sides, so x equals 0. Now here's the kicker. There are 2. See how that has an exponent of 2? There are 2 here, so I'm going to say this is a multiplicity of 2. All right, so targets. I know I got 0 as a target. I know I have negative 3, and it goes through that one. I know I have 4, and it goes through that. Now, what about at 0? Does it go through? It does not. Because it has a multiplicity of 2, an even amount, it's going to bounce here. So I'm going to draw my line, go through this one, bounce off of this one, go back through. So I get the W graph. Interesting problem. First time we had it bounce. If you have an exponent that is even, it will bounce. If that exponent is odd, it goes through. Which how often it appears affects the number of outcomes you get, how number of times it shows. The multiplicity is the number of times a 0 shows up. Okay, if it has an odd multiplicity, it crosses. I really don't care about this whole S through. It goes through it. And if there's an even multiplicity, it bounces off of it. This is a good note to keep there handy. You want to make sure that you remember that. So let's try this one. I think about this particular one. Okay, odd 1, go left. Factor out that x. Okay, x plus 5, x minus 3. Set each one equal to 0. Okay, now this 3 tells me there should be 3 answers. I have 3 answers. Good. They don't have any multiplicity. So this -5, this 0, and this 3. So I'm going to go through each one of these one time. Starts down here, ends up here. There it is. Let's try this one. Again. Odd, negative. Should be 3 answers. First thing I notice, there's an x in these. I really want this x squared to be positive, so I'm going to take out an x. This switches all those signs. Now I can factor this. Now, because this is just x squared, it sure makes it easier. I can just factor it like there's no problem, nothing to do with this, no big deal. So what times what gives me -8? That adds up to give me -2. Well, x minus 4, x plus 2. Set all your factors equal to 0, solve. Okay, so my targets, -2, 0, and 4. There you go. One last example here before we're done. Even, positive. Take out that x squared. All right, now typically whenever the variable's here, if I see it in all 3, it's usually the smallest exponent that I can take out of all of them. Multiplies to make 6, adds to make 5. That's 3 and 2. Set those equal to 0. Okay, I expect 4 answers. I see 3, but this had a square, so that tells me there's 2 of them here, so multiplicity of 2. That tells me it bounces off there. So my target's -3 goes through, -2 goes through, but 0, it bounces. So start, through, bounce, and go up. All right, there's your notes for section 5.2. Over the weekend, I might work on section 5.3 and get that ready for you guys. There is a quiz coming up this week, and I'll try to get a review sheet done this weekend for you guys to look at. We'll have to figure out how we're going to have you guys take this quiz this week. If you have any questions, you really got to email me and keep me up to date on what's going on with you. Obviously, I don't want you to sit there for 2 weeks and not do any math. We got to keep you up so that this gets done. Without a doubt, this is something you need to practice, something you need to keep up on. Okay, sounds great. We'll see you guys hopefully soon.